So, the other day you asked me a question. I thought it would be a good one for the CvilleBabyBodywork group.
Mm-hmm.
And so ask your question.
So my question is basically around sleep. So if I have a parent coming to me with a baby who says my baby is not sleeping,
Mm-hmm.
what are the numerous things that I can kind of step through and look for to see how to help?
Okay. All right, so when I have a parent that comes to me and says my baby's not sleeping, now the first thing I want to hear is all the things, right? How was pregnancy? How was labor and delivery? What happened after? So you're listening for all those layers of experience. So depending on what happens, I want to hear, okay, what are the routines? Where are the challenges? And they're all in different categories. There's no one, there's several scenarios that I listen for. One of them is, first of all, that sleep is just it's a state, and often I can use the way a baby falls asleep and wakes up to really begin to hear through the lens of sleep. And when you learn a baby's nonverbal cues, you'll learn that there's a way that a baby falls asleep and a way that a baby wakes up. So I'm listening for that. There's, if a baby, often one of the things they'll say is, my baby's fighting sleep.
Mm-hmm.
My baby won't go to sleep. So I want to listen, okay, what happened at the birth? And what I say to parents is, babies have a memory of what happened during birth and after birth. And sometimes babies lose consciousness, and it feels a little bit like falling asleep. And so it's a memory in their body. And so then I listen for, okay, how is it when they get drowsy, do they then suddenly wake up? And they sometimes, not all the time, they'll say yes. And I'll say, okay, well then tell me your baby's story. Tell me what happened. And if I'm with both mom and baby, I can listen to both mom and baby, because baby will want to tell their part of the story also. But I'll say sleep, and this is from Ray Castellino, sleep is about feeling safe. You have to be able to let go and be able to go into the deeper realms. And often, if a baby had an experience that was scary, whether it was in utero or as they made their transition out, they could have compressed their cord, they could have had, a moment when it was just overwhelming, and their body just goes, okay, let's just, parasympathetic dive here. Let's black out a little bit. And there's a memory in there. So I help the parent realize that the baby had an experience, and then I'll often teach the squeeze sequence, right? Mm-hmm. Little squeezes, creating oxytocin in the shoulders, down the feet. I'll teach them how to make the repair. I'll listen to the parent, because often the parent will also have moments when the birth was scary, or it was scary. And then I name that. I run through all the things that I do with parents.
And do you have the parent then, perhaps during the squeezes, talk to the little one about the story?
Not during the squeezes.
Okay.
I often will have the parent intentionally talk more about how it was for them. Mm-hmm. And just like putting the baby on their body and talking directly about how it was. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I'll actually do that in my space. Let's talk a little bit about what happened. And so then that's one scenario, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm just waiting, watching, listening. Sometimes the baby will participate. They'll squawk or cry or somehow participate in what's happening. And then I'll teach a baby massage, mm-hmm. or the baby squeeze sequence. And I'll say, all right, tell me about your bedtime routine. That's one scenario. And Another question I have is, how's sleep for you? And if you can connect the parent with their sleep, like sometimes some parents will say, I'm a good sleeper, and that's great. Some parents will say, I had pregnancy insomnia, which is a thing.
Yep.
And you're listening for that. You're like, well, your baby learns, about the rhythm of life through you. But that's very tricky because you have to be careful not for the parent to feel blamed. So you have to find a real loving and present way to talk to a parent about their experience. And so then I teach the things that Ray taught me, which were you hang out with your baby and you say, sleep. At nighttime is for sleeping. Daytime is for play and emotional expression. So when the baby wakes up at night, you say, can we talk about it tomorrow? Because nighttime is for sleeping. So that's one scenario.
Yeah.
Okay. Then, so ask a little more. I can tell you stories, but I'm just waiting for you to see.
So one client that I had recently talked about wanting to be able to co-sleep, to be able to have that connection still, but she was scared to death about co-sleeping. Is that something you recommend? And if so, how do you do that safely and carefully? And
well, ideally, like when you talk to any pediatric professional, we can't, say co-sleep because the pediatrics is out against that. So you have to be very careful how you mention it. But many people do co-sleep because that's how they get sleep. That's how I got sleep. Like when I had babies, I didn't want to get up. I just wanted to so I'll cite this research. And one of the things I'll tell them the story of James McKenna and how he created his own sleep laboratory. Do you know about James McKenna?
I just a little bit, not a lot.
Yeah. So there's a really great little book called Our Babies Ourselves by Meredith Small. I think that's who wrote it. And there's a chapter in there on sleep. And I love that little book. It's now dated, but it talks about how James McKenna, he was a primatologist, and how he watched how apes put their babies to sleep by pretending to be asleep, and how they had their babies on them and then they would pretend to be asleep and drowsy and breathe deeply, and then their baby would fall asleep. And then he saw all the challenges that American parents were having with their babies and decided to open a sleep laboratory. And in the sleep laboratory, he brought together parents and babies, and they co-slept. And he videotaped them. And he saw how in sleep, parents will attend to their baby, even in sleep. They're not so unconscious that they don't attend to their baby. And so there's a way that I provide, a chapter for them to read, and I give them, now James McKenna has, written a book called Breast Sleeping. He coined the term breast sleeping, and he's written a book on sleep, and he's very big on co-sleeping, and there's a lot of good data and research how people around the world co-sleep. And I also say to parents that in our country, the Pediatric Association says co-sleeping, they want to put the baby back to sleep to prevent SIDS and to prevent childhood or early demise. And the babies can be somehow affected by the sleep. Parent somehow impacts the sleep. So I give them all the data, and I tell them I can't tell you what to do, but here I want you to read for yourself and make your own decisions. And I tell them about my experience. But I have met families that co-sleeping does not work for them, even though they really want to, because the mom gets overstimulated by the baby in their bed. So you can give them information, like there's side sleepers, there's having other ways that babies can be in the same room with you. Do you know why this parent really wanted to co-sleep? Did she say anything about it?
Her deal was mainly that she felt the baby slept better when it was with her, but she had so much anxiety about the baby suffocating that she wanted to co-sleep, but she wasn't sure she could. And yeah.
Well, you want to help her set up for successful co-sleeping, talk with her about making sure there's space around them. I mean, I don't know.
We did end up ordering one of the little bassinet that's right on the...
Yeah, I mean, that's a good middle ground for her. And I would encourage her to go look at the research of James McKenna, who shows how parents do attend to their babies in their sleep. They don't suffocate them, and invariably, most of the time, unless they're intoxicated or they're somehow affected by some medication, or they're inappropriately, the mechanics of the sleep, like they're sleeping on the couch with their baby or something like that.
Right.
So
if I have a cold and I need to take some Sudafed, it might not be a good idea that night.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so you can problem solve and give them ideas, but as practitioners, as body workers, we can't tell them what to do. I mean, that's not our job.
Yes.
But we can lay out options for them. And that's why I like reading the research, because you can give people options.
Excellent.
Yeah. But overall, I repeat to parents that sleep's about feeling safe. That's the only way your body can know how to go into relaxation.
Right.
And if your baby wakes up a lot, then there's some story that wants to be told. And then my job is to help them discern what is the story that wants to be told.
Right.
And I have told stories about parents that bring their babies and they're at their wits' end, like they haven't slept in months. And I listen to the story, and I do what we call supported attachment, where I put the baby belly to belly with the parent and have the baby crawl off the breast. Often, invariably there, they'll tell the story. And, invariably they'll show how they tried to turn, and invariably there'll be a stuck place in the birth, and the nervous system will start to spiral and go down. And suddenly there's a moment when the baby's body will say, alert, alert, there's a problem, and they'll wake up. So those babies, generally, those cycles can be 45 minutes, baby sleeps 45 minutes and then wakes up and stuff like that, or they fight sleep, they don't go down to sleep.
Are those same patterns shown, I mean, obviously through the birth process, but what if things happen like in the NICU immediately after? Are those same patterns there from that?
Yes, I mean, babies can then be on the alert, or they can sleep a lot. I mean, it really depends on the baby. And one of the things that I consistently say to people who want to know about babies is that in our culture, we tend to come at babies from the outside in. And what I've learned is you have to come toward babies from the inside out and listen to what they are saying. And they don't come by themselves. So you listen to what the parents are saying. And our job is to listen to all of that, right? And then help them make decisions. But we don't make the decisions for them. We give them all the information.
Yes.
And then as manual therapists, we can help the body get it. They made it. That here is where they had the scary moment, and that we get it. But can you feel that you made it? And we can do that with parents, and we can do that with babies.
Right.
So that's our job. But there are all these other things that impact sleep. So, like we were talking before with Hannah, like often babies, before they make a developmental leap, their sleep will regress. And they'll go back to waking up every 2 hours, and then the next day they'll walk, or the next day they'll crawl, or the next day they'll be ready for solid foods. And this is one of the ways that we know that a baby is about to like either achieve or hit their milestones. And it's a big deal for a baby in their body. They're like, woohoo! The whole world changes when they can roll over, or they can finally sit up, or they can walk. And then they're very excited. But if you can begin to look at people's experiences through the lens of the autonomic nervous system, they are, where is their rest cycle? Where is their sleep cycle? And where is their mobilization cycle? What is their activation? And you listen to the story and you watch the physiology. And then for each family, you can just sort of give them skills, whether it's from the outside in skill or listening from the inside out skill. And there's no one way, but you have to have in your toolbox all these little skills. And it takes a while to learn all those skills as a body worker. Mm-hmm. Or you can refer to someone like Hannah, who comes really, PT is a lot of movement, and maybe we could ask a physical therapist what they would do with sleep.
All right, so like Kate mentioned, my name's Hannah. I'm a pediatric physical therapist. And my daughter is 16 months old, and she is going through, I think, a really big developmental leap right now. And so she's actually waking up some too. And she has always had a hard time sleeping in general. I would grade her like a C- sleeper. Mm-hmm. So we'll go through a couple weeks that are really good, and then we'll go through a couple weeks that are not so good. And she is a huge sensory vestibular seeker. So she does not let me rock her to sleep. I think I've rocked her to sleep 3 times since she was like...
So she gets overstimulated by movement.
So, well, I think she needs it to calm her down, but it has to be the right kind. So okay. For example, I cannot sit down and rock her. So I either have to be walking around the room and holding her, or I take her, the lights are off, her sound machine is on, her sleep sack's on. Mm-hmm. I put her upside down on my lap, and I do joint squeezes. Yeah. And that is how she receives the input that she needs to calm down, because I can't put her on me and rock. And so that's one of the things that I do. But for her specifically, what I've learned is she needs what we call in the therapy world heavy work. And so this helps her calm down. So what I'll have her do is carry a pack of diapers, or I'll have her climb up the slide a ton of times at the playground, and things that really challenge her physically and also cognitively. So last night I had her help me load the dishwasher. And
wow. 16 months.
Keep in mind, she also unloaded it after every time she put something in. But just trying to learn to challenge her in those ways. And from a physical therapy perspective, when I have parents coming to me about sleep, those are my biggest recommendations, is what do we need to tap into here? What are they seeking throughout their day? Do they need to be in a specific environment to help them transition better? A lot of times kids have a hard time going from 100 to 0. So if you're downstairs, the TV's on, someone's got a football game on, someone's cooking dinner, and then most kids go to bed at 6:37, and so all this hustle bustle is happening in your house, and then all of a sudden you take them to the nursery and you turn the lights off and you're like, go to sleep. And so just coming at it from a perspective of how can we help them transition, how can we help them feel stimulated enough, not overstimulated. So that's the approach that I would take if parents ask me about sleeping. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, listening to you, it reminds me of what we say in pre and perinatal somatic psychology. Like going to sleep is a major transition. And during all transitions, you're tracking the story. The story will often get told in transitions because birth is a major transition. Yeah. And I often give families games to play before sleep because that's where the story gets told. So it can feel like the parents are trying so hard to get the child to downregulate, right? They're reading them their book, they're giving them their bath, sometimes they have massage that I've taught them, they have their special light in the room, they have a special sound machine that they've got, and then they start to put the baby all the way down, close the light, and then it's wake up screaming, crying, Mom, I'm thirsty, Mom, I have to have another glass of water, I'm hungry. There's a lot of like fear that comes up. So I've learned how to listen for transition, and then like I'm interested in this work idea. I thought that was kind of cool. But similarly, I'll give them games to play. And I just coached a family through this, and they call it now special time. So 15 minutes before bed, like I had to do this with my son too. He would drive me nuts. Like he would be upstairs in our upstairs of our hall before bed, running as fast as he could up and down the hall, right? And I'd be like, stop, or he'd be run from one side of our house to the other and throw himself on the wall. He was a sensory seeker. So I learned with him, to run with him and do these things with him, not try, because I'm sensory, I'm the opposite. Like I get very overstimulated easily. So I had a movement therapist help me figure this out. He's 25 now, so I'll give people games to play. And often it's, for most babies in birth, where the challenge comes is the stuck place. Or it's too long or it's too fast. Invariably, those are the stories. And when a baby gets into a stuck place, their adrenaline comes up and then their body will often go into a shutdown. So I try to replicate the stuck place so that people can do it very quickly and easily. So there'll usually be a game that I teach them, a game of catch and the baby gets away, where there's a little bit of wrestling and the baby gets away, or a beanbag chair that they can jump into, or some game that illustrates, like they find the stuck place and they get away. They get out of the stuck place. And so it's a game that they play with the tools that understanding the autonomic nervous system and completion of an incomplete sequence. They got away, they get out of it, and then they're welcome back. But helping families figure out sleep is one of the biggest things that for a baby body worker. Parents hear that body work helps, and I think as a parent and as a consumer or as someone who wants to learn about babies, just realize that every family is going to have a different need. So you really have to listen, like I said, to everyone, and also yourself. Like a lot of how I help families comes from my own experience of my own exploration of what happened to me, and people will feel your authenticity. So I feel like really listening and knowing what you're hearing. But sleep is different for every family.